Hey, good morning everybody. It's about 6:30 on a Wednesday morning. About ready to head into work here and get my workday started. But I wanted to talk a little bit about The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's a book that came out in the late 90s. Of course, you know Charlie. He is going to high school in the early 90s. He's writing these letters to an anonymous friend. We don't exactly know who that is. But I tend to think it's just the reader, the person who wants to listen to him without judgment. All right. So Charlie is this troubled guy, and like I said, he's just starting high school, not really knowing what to expect. He lost a friend, close friend to him about a year ago. Take that back, not a year ago, probably about 5 or 6 months ago, and he's feeling depressed from that. And of course, he's anxious to know what's going to be happening with high school. A little fearful, a little apprehensive about the unknown, as we all were. You know, I remember going into high school for the first time and having those fears of not really knowing what to expect. You know, it was all my imagination as far as what might happen in high school. But anyway. So Charlie is kind of complex, you know, and this will all be brought out as the story progresses. I'm assuming you've read it and you know how it ends. But the book is divided into 4 sections. The first section we learn about Sam and Patrick, and they become friends, you know, with Charlie. They kind of take him underneath their wings and befriend him, and really just are open to him. All right, so I think this is the first time that Charlie is kind of seen for himself. All right, it's not a childhood friend that befriends him. It's not a family member. This is someone he's never really knew before, these 2 seniors. And obviously they kind of like him, his peculiarities, and Charlie likes them for their openness, their willingness to extend a hand to him to help him out a little bit. Okay, so one of the questions Charlie asks himself in section 1 is, you know, how can I feel sad and happy at the same time? So he's kind of like on this journey, this emotional journey to figure out himself and his place within his community, because he feels sort of like an outcast. Okay. All right, so the book moves into section 2, and we are introduced to Mary Elizabeth and a few of her friends, and they also become friends with Charlie. So Charlie's world is expanding at this point a little bit. He's making more friends. He's starting to get a feel for what high school truly is about. Okay, there's a lot of pressure from the teachers. There's pressure from other people within the school. You know, if you and I, you know, if we were in high school at this time, you know, there'd be pressure from athletics. If we're in a club, you know, we'd be feeling pressure from them. Our parents would be pushing pressure on us. You know, there's pressure to figure out what life's about, you know, what you want to be when you grow up. So there's a lot of things compressing in on Charlie. Plus, as I said, you know, he has to deal with the loss of his friend. So he's feeling depressed and also happy because he's meeting new people. We learn a little bit more about Brad and Patrick and their relationship that they have, the complex partnership that they're kind of figuring out, you know. We learn that Charlie actually loves Sam, but he's not expressing that in any sort of way. You know, he's keeping that hidden, partly because Sam does have a boyfriend at this point. I don't remember what his name is. So, first chapter I'd kind of summarize is Charlie being kind of recognized for himself, you know, as being an individual. And the second section I'd kind of see it as people being repressed a little bit. You know, they can't fully share their emotional side because of the fact that there's pressures on society, kind of either internal or external, kind of hindering them from doing that. So there's a dilemma that's going on, and there's this pull, this tension, if you will, that, you know, people want to act free, like kind of like going to a play, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You want to act free, be yourself, but at the same time you're being constrained by the rules of society and those internal emotional pressures that we feel. Alright, so we get into the third section, which things change quite a bit. Charlie actually starts dating Mary Elizabeth, and they have this, I think it's kind of a strange relationship. Mary Elizabeth is kind of projecting her own wants and feelings on to Charlie, and Charlie is not standing up for himself at all. He's not expressing what he wants in the relationship, so it's kind of a one-sided affair, and it's really draining Charlie, to the point where Mary Elizabeth buys Charlie that book, and Charlie's like, I don't even want to really deal with this book. So he returns it to the store, then he gets upset, and he goes back and rebuys it. What happens? Oh, I forgot to mention, at the end of section 2, Charlie gets his driver's license, which is kind of symbolic for him, becoming more free as an individual. He can start doing things that he wants. And in section 3, he actually uses that freedom, that ability to drive a car. He drives his sister to the abortion clinic so he can be there with her. So Charlie is definitely changing in this book, but we still have this underlying depression from Charlie. He keeps mentioning his Aunt Helen, how he misses her. I don't think he really fully understands. In fact, his very first trip in the car with his driver's license, he goes to his Aunt Helen's grave and kind of spends some time with her. So again, the book is not divulging exactly what's going on with that, but there's definitely a past there with Aunt Helen. Okay. So the book progresses into the fourth section, and of course the book starts to wrap things up. We meet Bob in person, Bob the drug dealer, where Charlie's been getting his marijuana from, and he's been spending a little bit of time with Bob, and I think Charlie's kind of realizing that Bob's life isn't all that great, because he only sits around, he gets high, talks about the Mary Tyler Show, and he really doesn't know anything else, and that's the only thing that Bob talks about. And Charlie even acknowledges, because after a while, it kind of got boring hanging out with this guy. At first it was kind of cool, but now it's kind of boring because there's really no depth to this guy's personality. Alright, so the book moves forward. There's a lot of apprehension by Charlie. He's happy for his friends that they want to graduate high school and they're going to be making plans to go on to college, but he's also sad. That theme comes back where he's happy and yet sad at the same time, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with that. That's kind of like how our lives are in some respect, because we have good things that happen to us, we have bad things that happen to us, and we have to figure out how we're going to marry heaven and hell in our lives, how things can be so good at times and also so bad at times and so challenging. And that's the real challenge of life. And unfortunately, in your adolescence years, there's a lot of pressure to figure that out quickly. As I said, there's pressures from other kids, there's pressure from teachers, parents, you name it, internal pressures, and it really makes for a pressure cooker that we call high school. So the book continues to move on. The graduations happen, and the last 2 letters are like this deluge of emotion. We finally find out what happened with Aunt Helen, and I don't know about you, but I was just torn apart by what happened to Charlie, and it was very sad, but I guess I also felt, and I hope you felt the same way too, that this is just the starting point for Charlie's life, that he went through a lot of bad stuff, some challenges, and he had a lot of new experiences, but at the same time, he learned from that. He learned from his relationship from Mary Elizabeth that there's certain things that he needs too, and hopefully in his next relationships he'll be able to express those. The fact that he was able to consciously deal with Aunt Helen and what happened to him, that's just a starting point for him. You'd hope that his spiral is now going to be an upward spiral, so that as he progresses through the next 3 years of high school to graduation, that he becomes a much more stable individual. Now, because there's 4 sections in this book, I kind of equated it to freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, where certainly things weren't perfect at the end of the 4th chapter, but again, I kind of felt like, Charlie has a chance now to survive and thrive. He seems like a really gifted guy, a great writer, and at the same time, he has this good foundation to build from. Okay, so a couple things that I noticed. The fact that there's a strong tie to music in this book. There's certain songs that are projected that Charlie is gravitating towards, and I think that's purposeful. So I don't know if the author's trying to make a statement or even just subliminally think about how music is a strong influence in our lives, how it's a support to us. I know it has been in my life. There's been times where I've relied upon music to change my mood and really express how I'm feeling at that time. So I get that. Also, there's a strong tie to the books. The books that the English teacher, I forget his name, Bill, it might have been, how the English teacher assigned different books to Charlie were a reflection to kind of what he was going through. So, those are some pretty more detailed topics that would take more time to divulge, but perhaps worth looking into. But good book. It's written in a straightforward manner. Lots of references, lots of stuff going on in this book. More than what I can even begin to talk about in this video. There's, like I said, there's an abortion that happens, there's date rape, there's sex, there's drugs, there's bad language, there's alcohol, there's relationships, dating, the detailed dynamics of the family between Charlie and his sister, Charlie and his brother, Charlie and his dad, Charlie and his mom. Lots of things to build and talk about in this book. I found it a very deep book. It doesn't read that way. It reads very simply, but when you stop and think about what is being presented, you're like, wow, we could spend a long time talking about that or thinking about that. So, good book. I enjoyed it. Quick read. Hope you get into it. The movie's great too. All right. Bye-bye.